I mean, in my experience, you use it and find the right angle for what curve you need to draw. It's kind of a fluid thing. It's not like a triangle.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And you know what the dadgum problem is with electric notepads that, you use a fake pen to write on, which, by the way, I enjoy the fact that I can do that and reference it, blah, 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 all those other things.
Yeah.
But, every so often you put your hand on the dadgum thing and it's like, well, where'd that go? Well, how come I'm
They still
on
haven't
page?
fixed that yet?
Yeah, how come I'm on page 5? I'm on, and I'm like, I've written one word on page 1. How did it get to page 5? And it just did that right as you hit record this morning. I looked down, I'm like, where the heck did it go? What button did I push arbitrarily with the meaty part of my hand?
I do not understand the technology behind those touch screens and tablets and all that kind of stuff. But all it makes me think, and that's why I said they still have that problem. Because I remember the smart boards in my classrooms growing up, like middle school, they started rolling out every classroom.
You mean back in the day when you had, yeah. Smart board.
Back in the day, we had smart boards rolling out. I'm sure they're in every classroom now. And actually, they're probably well past that technology now. But I remember that problem. If you couldn't write, you had to write like this the whole time because you can't put your hand up against it. So I am appalled that the technologists out there have not fixed that yet. I'm as angry as you are, Dad.
I would say that, 80% of the time. Well, no, take that back. When I'm writing, it doesn't do it. It's when you just happen to put your hand down casually because, you look up and you see that you're joined by our good friend Deana Mitchell, and it's like I put my hand down on my fake paper to say hi to Deana, and then I look down at my fake paper, and if we were cutting down trees, I would have cut down a whole bunch of them to make the extra paper at this point. So I guess it all comes back to I'm still saving the sea turtles by doing this.
There you go. Save your sea turtles.
I can complain to folks if you're a follower of the show, sea turtles mean a lot to me in many different ways. So, but yeah, Deana, do you use real paper or fake paper when you take notes?
I use real paper.
Oh, well.
Like I have notebooks everywhere. Sometimes I can't find them because I have too many notebooks.
Well, I've got a stack of them down in the man cave that maybe someday somebody will flip through them and go, what the hell was Otis thinking when he wrote that? Or why didn't he tell me about that? Or, ooh, he shouldn't have written that down. There will be many things like that when you get to go through those things, Camden. Unless you already did when we weren't here the other day.
No. I'm saving that. No, I go back through my books, though. You never gone back through your notes? I've gotten some good ideas. I go back through and go, hey, I remember in March of 2022 that I was dealing with this problem set and found that notebook, which, by the way, Dad, you have yours organized in the man cave. Mine are in a pile under my desk, which I was looking at this morning, thinking I needed to figure out a better system.
Probably holding your desk up.
They are. One of the legs broke, just got a stack of 40 books underneath it.
You better start taking some more notes because it's sagging. So Deana, when you're taking notes, are you really taking notes, or are you jot down, or are you a dictator? And dictator, not in the do this, but dictator in the write everything down.
No, I try to write notes when I want to remember something, and then a lot of times I go back and look at them and I can't read them.
Isn't that funny?
Writing too fast.
Yeah, I remember that back when I was in school. you're trying to write down the important things that the professor says, and you go back to study for the test, which rarely happened to me. But those one or two times that I would go back and study for the test, I'd be like,
Mhm.
"What's this?" And I'd go to my roommate John, and I'd say, "John, can you read this?" He's like, "Dude, you wrote it."
Well, it's funny because when I was probably high school or college, my mom would write her grocery list and she'd get to the grocery store and she couldn't read it. And I used to like make fun of her because I went to architecture school and we had to print everything just perfectly.
Mm.
But now that I'm older, I try to write really fast and now I feel like I'm, turning into my mom. Can't read my grocery list.
Well, there's probably a lesson there in that
Mm-hmm.
we rush through. We're trying to write down the important things,
Mhm.
and then we rush through it, and we've written down scribbles. But the question would be, and the dilemma, I think, becomes when you focus on writing something down, you're not listening,
Mhm.
and you can't read it later. But the irony is that you still remember it because you went through the actions of writing it down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, have you found that happens to you, Deana?
Yes.
Yeah. Except for after you've been in the Walmart for 15 minutes looking for that thing you needed on the list that you can't read, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I'm curious. You mentioned the architecture school, and how the heck do you go from that to entrepreneurship? You're not, yeah, because folks, spoiler alert before Deana gets into her story here, she wasn't building buildings. You weren't designing skyscrapers or anything like that. How do you connect those two dots?
You were not Atlas Shrugged?
Well, when I was in high school, my parents encouraged me to go to college for sure. And my dad really wanted me to be like a doctor or a lawyer, or, something that would give me a lucrative career, I guess. And I first went to Colorado State my first year and I made really bad grades because I was just having fun. And then I went back to Louisiana and decided I applied for architecture school. And I had to go to southeastern Louisiana for 3 semesters to get my grades up to get into architecture school. And then I had 5 years. The architecture program was 5 years at LSU. And so I worked full time all through those years and didn't sleep much. And I really liked the design part of it, but I also liked the structure and the components of it, I guess. Um, but I designed buildings that were buildable and efficient, and I got C's. And I
Because
They
they
weren't
weren't
cool enough.
sexy. I know. I
friends who
know.
now own their own firms,
Mhm.
and they would design things that couldn't even be built, and they would get A's, and I was so frustrated. So by the time I graduated, I had been running restaurants all through school. So I worked in restaurants for a long time, and then I started working in hotels and doing events, and so I had my own event company, and then I lost that all to COVID, and then now I have a couple of things going on. I help entrepreneurs with things, and I have a nonprofit. So that's a
Well, um,
very short explanation of your.
There we go. Hit stop on the recording. We got the story.
yeah, well, no, because I didn't think about it. And actually, I didn't know it until shortly before the show when I do my pre work. I got to do my warm ups and things like that. That's how I do this so well. Got a system and a routine. But before that, in the foretelling of fate, because I feel like I've been talking a lot about fate today. So y'all folks listening now, just think back
Strap
to
in.
when this show was recorded. Yep, mark your calendar for the 28th of August. Otis was going down the fate road. I got a special shirt on today, and the reason I have this shirt on is because I am one. And if you notice the colors, you can't see it. We're going to shrink it down here.
There's that.
There.
There's that.
And this young lady happens to be from LSU. And I just want to say this is a validation that we here at 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis are a multi-diverse organization, and we are very accepting of others from other places and universities. Like
all I have to say
LSU.
is, we were SEC before you were. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, all my aunts and uncles and other mama and Pawpaw went to LSU.
Oh yeah.
So Uncle Kerry,
I was
when
say,
you listen
can't
to
talk
this,
too much trash. Like you didn't grow up down the street.
yeah. Well, and Uncle Kerry always reminds me that he went to LSU too. So, and he went there a lot because he's a lawyer. So yes, and I'll also share the reason when I was in high school I got into drafting. I love drafting, and everybody else was doing like you said. They were doing these beautiful sketches of houses and buildings and things like that. And I went to our teacher, Mr. Rogers, and I said, I ain't doing that. And I can't do that. And he said, well, I got a project for you then. Because that was the senior project for the drafting class, was all these people doing architecture stuff. And they were good, sketching out bushes and things. He says, I got something for you. And he goes in the back of the room in the closet, pulls out this cardboard box and drops it on my drafting decks and puts a caliper next to it and says, draw an exploded view of this lawnmower engine. So in hindsight, that's what you should have done. You should have drawn a lawnmower engine.
Well, the thing is that my dad was a draftsman and a machinist.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a drafting table upstairs that is
You still do?
over 50 years old.
That's
And
cool.
it has a little plaque on the bottom of it that says property of LSU. My dad bought 6 of them in an auction, and he sold 5 of them, and he kept that one for me, and it was at his house for a long time. And everybody that would go to the house would try to buy it, and he's like, nope, that's for my daughter. And so I have it. It's really awesome.
That is a really cool family heirloom. What do you use it for?
Well, we just moved in this house, so I haven't really used it much, but I also have all of his old drafting tools. So really cool.
I might have to come up and visit. I mean,
would do.
yeah. That's I for the longest time I kept a French curve in my desk. Here I am as a leadership team building development coach, but I couldn't find myself to get rid of that French curve.
Yeah, I still have all my stuff, and I used a lot of my dad's tools while I was in college. I didn't even buy some of my own. I used his.
I just did a quick Google and saw the French whatever. How the hell y'all use that to draw anything? That's a rabbit we don't have to chase.
Well, there is a lesson in using the French curve.
Yes, there is.
There's, and I'm gonna let our guest go first on explaining that lesson.
Oh, well, I mean, in my experience, you use it and find the right angle for what curve you need to draw. It's kind of a fluid thing. It's not like a triangle.
There you
That
go.
makes sense, actually, looking at it, because I was like, why has it got all these different curves, but you're just trying to find the right angle of that curve and tangents or whatever other buzzwords, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I'll take it into a whiskey words category of what you're doing is you're seeing a way to connect 3 separate things, minimum, and you're doing the French curve, and there's some other techniques and things like that. But what you're doing is you're creating a smooth line that connects unconnected things. And if you start thinking about that in life, we've got this, and this. Well, how do I connect these things into a smooth process? And So maybe I need to pull that French curve back out again and have it sit up here on my desk. I'm thinking right now, maybe put it up on the shelf next to the whiskey bottle.
It's a
Because,
lesson.
yeah,
There you go.
Yeah.
That makes me think actually to my event days with Verby. One of the things that we were very excited about during COVID launching the virtual events was the connecting of these different dots. I wasn't doing anything special, but the food delivery, the gift box, all those kind of things, they were all existing services that we bundled together. We found the right curve, I guess you could say, Dad, using your French curve there. Deana, did you talk to me about your time in the event management and event planning space? How did you kind of use those architecture skills of, the French curve or whatever it is to apply and, be effective with events?
Well, I started doing events probably in college. And then.
Well, no wonder you had bad grades.
Well, I was always I was always involved in whatever I could be involved in, and so we had a organization for architecture students that I got involved in, and then I was like one of the team captains of the softball team we had, and then we'd have an event, and they're like, "Well, Deana needs to plan it because she knows how to do all that," and I don't know how that all came about, but I enjoyed it. And then in restaurants, I started being in charge of the private dining room and selling it and, making that special. And then I started working in hotels. So for 15 years, I was conference services in hotels. And I did every kind of event you can imagine. I worked with every corporate company you can think of. And after those 15 years, we moved for my husband's job. And so I started my own event company. And I had it for 10 years. And then I lost it all to COVID. But during all that time, I just had so many great experiences working with so many people and different kinds of events. And I love the challenge of this is what we want to get out of this event. And we want you to design it so that we can get that outcome. And, some of them had some ideas about what they wanted, and we talk about all kinds of event stuff, but it was a creative challenge, kind of like architecture to me. And I think that what I had learned in architecture school, helped me with the structure and the like building stages. And if you had a tent, you need HVAC and you need, all those things fit into a lot of what I did in events. So there's a correlation for sure.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had one there. No, with that, then I would love to hear how you've applied that to the business side of it, because I think that's one thing that people, I could think of the accountants we've had on, the like computer scientists and things who get really, really detail oriented, and that usually helps a lot with the planning process. With hindsight's 2020, of course, looking back on that, did that extra knowledge help you to plan it out in that kind of a way? Or was it still, we got to make adjustments as we go because, business is confusing like always?
Well, I think it was helpful, but I've always been, number one, very driven. So if there's something that I don't know how to do, I am going to figure it out. It's just who I am. But I also think, I think the creativity part of it was what I really enjoyed, but the mechanics of it was what I was really good at, if that makes sense. So It's like you dream up what this event is going to look like, or, somebody has a certain thing they want to create for their clients. And it's like the creativity part is the fun part for me, and like dreaming about all the things we could do and then figuring out what we can actually make happen, so it's kind of two-sided coin. And I really enjoy both sides.
Did you do that? Just made me think of like storyboarding. Did you do a form of that to set up the event? Did you with your clients?
Yeah, we didn't necessarily do drawings, but we did proposals. And proposals was probably what took the majority of our time, other than actually executing events, because the proposals that we did were pretty intense. Um, because a client would say, okay, we're going to bring 100 people to Telluride, and we want to go ice climbing, and we want to have this and this and this and this. And so we would have to work with all the companies that provided those things or create it ourselves, and have it very detailed and very, the price all broken down of like what we can do. And then they would say, well, I want this, but I can't afford this, or let's change this to something else. So the proposal process was always pretty intense because it was also always custom. It wasn't a cookie cutter thing where you're just booking a hotel or you're just booking a zip line or whatever. It was much more intense than that.
Talking about understanding those complexities there, I'd love to hear, as you're kind of building out that team, communicating that with them. Because I think that's the interesting layer of it. It's like, hey, you get these things, the joke of looking at the numbers on the chalkboard and they're floating off. You're like, oh, I get it. Translating that into the team is really difficult. How did you go about kind of building that out as a system?
Well, I think, excuse me. Sorry. I had an amazing team, and I had people who had worked with me in the hotel world that worked with me, so they knew me, and we had done a lot of stuff together already, most of them. And then I had a couple new people that just really wanted to learn and really put in the work and hours to get the knowledge that they wanted. And it's just all about communication. And some of us worked remotely, some of us worked in different parts of Colorado because we worked all over the state. So we were just really good at communicating and staying on the same page. And I was constantly training people. I That's just who I am. And I think the people were receptive to learning, so it made for a good leadership position for me, because they were wanting to learn, and they weren't sitting back waiting for me to tell them what to do. You know what I mean? So it made for a really good team. And I think there was one week where we had 7 different events in 3 different cities. And, I can't be in all those places. So my team was amazing. And I think that was a few months before COVID was that, because it was kind of the height of our success. And the day that everything shut down was 24 hours before we had 6 Johnson & Johnson groups arriving from Europe in Denver.
Oof.
And it all got canceled at the last minute. We had bought out restaurants. We had buses booked, anyway. So.
One of the things that I think is interesting about the event space is, with that kind of a system, especially talking about all these different events, you're removed from the outcomes. You have your team there, and you have a good team, like you were saying. But then also between vendors and all these different moving parts, what was your approach for trying to control that outcome? Because it's really easy to say, hey, look, we could deliver this thing. And then now when you got to call 15 different people to deliver that thing, now your confidence level can kind of drop a bit on that. What did you do to make sure that you were controlling that outcome to the standard that you wanted?
Well, I think it's at first it's kind of trial and error. I mean, to be honest, everybody starts somewhere, right? But I think, after a while, we had vendors that we worked with all the time. They were like an extension of our team, and I knew exactly what to expect. They knew to come to me if they had something, or one of us, if there was something they couldn't do, and we always solved it as a team. And so if it was, an event where there was something we had planned and for some reason it wasn't going to work. And they would come to us and say, we're having this issue. And then we would all just decide, how can we fix it? And that was immediately, like, how can we fix it? Especially if we're at the event setting up and it's almost time. And I think, the worst part about that is if we can't figure it out and we have to do something as an alternative, then I have to go tell the client. So, those kinds of things. But I mean, clients get it too. Most of our clients are event planners, so they get it. They know how these things work. And sometimes there's just things that can't happen the way we need it to. And so normally they're pretty, when we go to them and tell them this isn't going to happen, we always have a solution, but we're going to do this. And so when you do that, I think they see that you're thinking it through and you're doing the best you can. And most of them are very nice about it and understanding. Not
quite not quite. I was going to say, I'm picturing part of the reason I asked that is because I'm picturing folks kind of more the bridezilla type of person that you're working with. But it's good to hear that it's not all that. Yeah.
No, it's not always like that. But I think there's also times when clients, when people would approach us to do an event for them and create a experience, and we would tell them, this is what we need. Maybe it's staffing. Maybe it's, whatever it is we need to make this happen the way you want it to. And every once in a while, we'd have a client that wouldn't pay for something. Or they're like, I'm not going to pay for 6 staff. I'm going to pay for 3. And then something goes wrong. And it's directly related to what we said we needed and you didn't give us. And so I finally got to the point where I just said, well, then we can't do this for you, because I know if I don't have X, Y, and Z, I can't make it happen. And that happened one time where a client was upset with us, and it still bugs me.
Yeah, I mean that's a human nature, right? Because now you're like, oh, they don't like me, and I'm not making fun of you. I'm making fun of myself. That's what that voice says, and now it sticks with you. That one person, I helped all these other people. We were so successful. But that one person wrote a bad review or said we didn't do a good job, and it's a human nature thing that just drives me crazy. So I'm vocalizing it for folks out there in radio land, YouTube land. I guess that's YouTube land, not radio land.
Drive them to YouTube.
YouTube land. As a reminder, a foot stomper, God, who cares, right?
And I think sometimes it could be a vendor. It could be, one time we rented out a venue for somebody, and normally everything, we know what we need to make something happen, and the venue did not own up. Like, they didn't have the bar set up on time, and and it's not like we can jump in and help, but it's not our, it's also not our place, so it makes it very hard. But I think for the most part, in the 10 years that I had my own business, we had I can count on half of a hand how many times we had a problem like that, or a client that was upset, because we had all been doing events for so long. Like, we knew what it takes, and being prepared and planning ahead is crucial.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry, I had a question on that before we shift gears, because one of the things that I found super useful with when I was doing events was a pre-mortem exercise of going through. It's okay, hey, day after the event, night after the event, things went wrong, the event was terrible, all these kind of things. Okay, what was the specific things that went wrong, so you could try to come up with them ahead of time, right? Mm-hmm. I would love to hear if you had any little tools like that, any little systems you used to help to come up with, or really just to help poke holes in the plan sometimes, so that you could be ready for when things start to get a little shaky at the event.
To be honest with you, I never really did that. but I think the fact that I did so many events on the hotel side where someone else was planning them, and I saw what went wrong and what went well, and I knew from writing the BEOs or the banquet event orders from my side, I knew what they were planning, and then I could see what went wrong or what didn't. And I did that for 15 years, every day, all day. So it was,
Mm-hmm.
by the time I had my business, it was a little different because I had a different role, but I was more in control of it. And I never really did that exercise, but I just knew from my experience, like what works and what doesn't. And I remember being in the ballroom with some lady one time that worked for the government. I don't remember what group it was, but she was a green planner, and we were having a conversation about AV equipment, and I told her what needed to happen, and she disagreed with me, and then it went all wrong. And then I'm standing in the ballroom before we open the doors for lunch with her, and she's in tears, and I'm like, of course I didn't say I told you so, but I'm like,
Did you shake your finger at her too?
like I was trying to like help her not be upset, and we had to open the doors for lunch, and anyway, so there's a lot of different situations like that where you have so many people involved, especially if it's in a big event, and it's like, how do you hone in all of those people that may or may not think they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, and it reminds me, and I have no idea where I got this from or who said it, but you have to have burned your hands before you can talk about fire. And there's a lot of truth to that. And you had all those years of inherent knowledge. With that love and passion of that of planning and executing events that thanks to the federal government, you name it, whoever we want to point fingers at, and the pandemic. Uh, why didn't you step back into that? Why did you say, no, thank you very much, events, I'm going to go do this thing? Why didn't you start it back up?
Well, 2 years before the pandemic, I had some revelations, and
Mm.
started I don't know. I spent a lot of decades working all the time, and events will allow you to work all the time, 24/7, as long as you want. Um, but I had surgery in 2018, so I was in bed for a couple weeks, and I had all these revelations for myself about, I've been telling my friends and family no for years. I've been not available to do things that maybe I want to do. And I was very blessed in a lot of ways. I traveled a lot. I got to go on a lot of trips and see the world. And I was blessed in a lot of ways. But I just felt like I've got to figure out how to have more balance in my life. And so I started making some changes, and I was scared it was going to be detrimental to my business. And instead, our revenue doubled the next year.
Hmm.
And 2020 would have been our best year ever. And, you know, I had 5 employees and about 30 contractors who worked for me, and I had to lay them all off. I had a Denver office. I had a Denver apartment because we lived in the mountain towns, and my husband worked in hotels. So we lived all over Colorado. But when I opened the Denver office, I didn't have a place to stay. So I had a place there, and then I had, so it was a lot. And we had 2 storage units full of rental stuff. We had all kinds of stuff. So when everything fell apart, I started selling or donating a lot of our rental stuff. Um, I gave up our office. I gave up the apartment, and I don't know. I closed it because I didn't see a way out, and I had to go through bankruptcy. And then when, you know, I started a nonprofit for suicide prevention because that was another thing I was dealing with at the moment. I lost a friend at 18 to suicide, and it made me face my own journey from 23 years prior. And so it just felt like that was my new mission in life. And so we've had the foundation for 5 years now. Um, and then I started 2 more businesses that are all about helping entrepreneurs. And one of them is the book I wrote, The Shower Genius, is about what happened in 2018 and how I changed everything. And so that's a framework that I teach other people now. So I don't know. I feel like my new mission is to help other people, whether it's in business or in mental health or both.
I love that. I would love to actually dive into a little bit of the framework. I know you and I talked some when I was on your show, talking a little bit about this, but of that framework of, the importance of, like the shower, of having that forced pause where you're actually thinking by yourself for a little bit and, working through those kind of thoughts alone with your mind. Could you talk through what that framework looks like and what those benefits are?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first step I talk about, there's like 3 phases in the book. So the first phase is called assess and acknowledge. And the steps in that are that, number 1, you have to be fed up to change. If you're not fed up with your situation, you're never going to do it. So you have to get fed up. And then my other step in there is the value of ranting. And I think that if you turn on a Zoom or a audio note, whatever, and you just start talking about what you're upset about or what you're frustrated with, talk as long as you can. Like, as long as you can. Because you can say the first 3 sentences and be done, but that's not going to get you where you need to be. You have to keep talking about it, keep talking about it. And then you have to listen back to it. And you're going to hear things that you didn't even know you were thinking. And you're going to hear things where in a perspective that you can try to come up with solutions to what you were ranting about. And so that helps you decide, well, what changes do I need to make? So those are the first 2 steps. But one of my favorite in the second phase is called becoming MIA. And that means missing intentionally alone. And that could be go to lunch with a book for an hour or go rent an Airbnb for 3 days. But you have to spend time alone to rest, recuperate, and then have the creativity in order to have the productivity and success that you want. And if we don't give our brains a break, we can't ever get to that place. Because if we're not having creative thoughts and we're not productive, we're not going to be successful. And if we're working 18 hours a day and not eating and not taking care of ourselves and all that, our brain can't function right. And so that's kind of how I came up with the mental health thing with the business thing, because, I think of showers as strategy sessions now. And I have what I call aqua notes. You can get them on Amazon, and they're notes that you could put in the shower where you can write things down. And it's, it started because I was having these creative thoughts during COVID with soap in my hair, and I'd get to my desk and I couldn't remember them.
Yep.
And so I put a whiteboard in my bathroom, and that's how all this started.
I'm just picturing, I got the big glass doors. I might just get some Expo markers and just start writing all over.
There you go.
The wax pens Miss Suzanne uses to mark wine glasses would probably work.
There we go. The piece I would love to dive into on that is you mentioned it's if you're working 18 hours, not spending time with the family, not taking care of yourself, that you're not going to be creative, you're not going to be high energy, you're not going to perform at your highest level. Totally agree there. the argument, the devil's advocate argument, I guess you would get from the entrepreneur is, well, Deana, I'm the only one. I got to do this. These things need to get done. What are your thoughts on balancing that? Because that's such a tricky piece. If there are sprints as an entrepreneur, there's times where you need to suck it up and work those crazy days. There's also times where you need to recognize that if you keep doing that forever, your business is going to fall apart. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on trying to walk that line there?
Yeah, I agree with you. And there are definitely times that you have to do that, especially in the event world. But, you have to find a way to find balance. It's non-negotiable in my mind from now on. For decades, I did the wrong thing. But it's part of the reason that my partner, Christopher, and I started Wolfpack Mentors. Because we built it specifically for what I'm talking about, and specifically for people who are solopreneurs and don't have a team yet. So if you're in that space, we have a Go High Level platform so you can build your website. We have accountability groups where you meet with a maximum of 4 people, meet every week with either Christopher or I facilitating. And those meetings are what moves people forward the most, because each month, each person has a time to ask for help from the other people in the group. And so that is what we call our accountability packs. And then we do group coaching. We have all kinds of resources. We do free workshops. We do all kinds of things for people. But I think it's the support that a solopreneur needs to get to the level where they can have a team themselves. And it is, I don't know, it's really cool to see people grow. And the 2 of us I've owned 7 businesses. So I'm done creating businesses. I just want to help other people get to their dream. And I think Wolfpack is really, we did beta groups for 2 years to prove what we were doing worked. So we're really excited about the people we get to help in there every day and support for, yeah. So that combined with the framework from the Shower Genius, I think really can help somebody build a business in a way where they're not working like that, like I did for 20 years.
Yeah, giving yourself space to think, it's amazing. We've talked about that many times here at Tribe and Purpose, and the don't continue to pound your head on the computer screen because you can't think of what to do. Go out and take a walk, or like you said, take your clothes off and get in the shower. That is a technique. I like to go for a walk. I don't like getting naked, but that's a whole different thing.
I like climbing mountains.
There you go.
They're my thing.
It's too damn hot here. I'm going to go with the shower, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. You go take a cold shower, boy, because you live in Arizona. And, just thinking about that always reminds me of what I learned. And I never thought about the French curve in that way until today. So I feel like I could write maybe an article, maybe a book, or maybe just pull out that old French curve that I put down in the craft drawer and just set it behind me. So when I'm talking with somebody, I can look in the video screen of myself and see it sitting there right next to Atlas Shrugged and think, yep, there you go. And yes, that is right there. That big ass book that everybody recognizes. But yeah, that's what I learned is the French curve is a nice metaphor for connecting things that are disconnected. So, Camden, how about you? What'd you learn? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something, Deana?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. Cam, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, I think for me, in addition to what the heck a French curve is, I won't piggyback off of yours there, Dad. But I've seen those before, and I didn't know what it was, and I thought it seemed pointless, like a little thing for a kid to draw with or something. But it makes sense now, so thank y'all for that. But no, the big thing for me was, Deana, you kind of said this at the end, and it's such a good reminder that it's like you have to be fed up to change. You have to reach a certain point where you are tired of the situation you're in order to go through the pain that is making that change, because it is painful to make that change. Dad, we had this conversation on Steel Men a couple weeks ago, talking about, the dehumanization of the world and, being disconnected and all these kind of things. And one of the things that I think is fascinating about that is technology keeps us just connected enough that we don't feel lonely. And it's just connected enough that I don't go make new friends, because I have my friends on Instagram and I get all that kind of stuff, because it doesn't get you, it keeps you just comfortable enough that you don't get fed up enough to actually make the change. And so I think that's one real world application for y'all out there. But I think that's a really important thing to recognize, that those crutches, those things that help to make you feel a little bit more comfortable, they also prevent you from changing in the big picture. So you gotta throw that crutch away every now and then.
Awesome. Deana, how about you? What'd you learn?
Well, I think it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, is that, when you procrastination is what kills all of us in our businesses. And I think that when you're feeling that procrastination, it's because your brain needs a break, like we were talking about. And if, I felt kind of like that this morning. I was like, on Thursdays, I don't usually have calls. So this was my only call today. And I was like, I'm going to get so much done. And then I got up this morning and I was like, I just felt like a funk. Like, I just don't feel like doing anything. And so I'm like, I need to go sit outside in the sun for a minute, or I need to go do something, physical or work out or something, to get my brain in a place where I can be productive. And I think that's, what we're talking about. And sometimes you just sit in that, and then you procrastinate, and then you're mad at yourself because you wasted hours. You know what I mean? It's like this whole cycle. And so I think it's like we're all saying, like, get up and do something physical, or take a nap or something, so then you can come back fresh and, with your creative brain in check.
Yeah, that's great. Break that cycle. Deana, how do folks find you and learn more about what y'all got going on?
My website is deanabrownmitchell.com, and Deana is spelled Deana. So you can find all my endeavors there and connect
Awesome.
with me, or book a call or anything like that.
Yeah, and I was snickering because we had a conversation in the green room about the name Deana and how do you spell it and say it, and all these different variants of people I know that choose to do it differently than the right way is what I would say. So I'm going to say it the right way. Deana, thank you so much for your time today. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. It was fun.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Deana Mitchell, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, that full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again. We'll see y'all next time.